Well, hey, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the next installment of Best Movie, Worst Movie, breaking down different categories of films and talking about what's the best and what's the worst. I'm one of your hosts. My name is John Campy here, and I'm, of course, joined by writer, producer, director, the wonderful Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how you doing, sir?
John, it's fantastic to be here. This has quickly become my new favorite podcast to listen to, which is surprising considering I'm on it.
There's a little bit of bias there. I
Maybe.
think there's probably just a touch of bias there. And of course, also joining us, he is a lifelong film fanatic. He's an Olympic swimmer. He's Mr. Cody Miller.
I am so excited to be doing this. Thank you so much. We got a lot of this is like I was looking at the movies that came out in this category, and it is stacked, and I'm super pumped to be here. Thanks, guys. I'm pumped.
Yeah, now we've already, of course, covered the best and the worst of the MCU. We've covered the best and the worst of 80s action films. And we are going to talk today about a really great and significant year. And we'll go into the significance of the year here in just a bit. But we're going to talk today about the films of 2012. Now, 2012 was an absolutely stacked year at the box office and had a lot of great films. I mean, it was the year that at the Academy Awards, we had films like Django Unchained, which was absolutely magnificent. We had Les Mis, which I absolutely love. I think that's an underrated film. We had Steven Spielberg's Lincoln, Silver Linings Playbook, Zero Dark 30, Amour, and of course, Ben Affleck's Argo actually won Best Picture that year at the Academy Awards. But also 2012 saw a number of trends both start and come to an end. It was in 2012 that the final Christopher Nolan Batman film, The Dark Knight Rises, came out that year. That was the end of a very short, but still a very important era, particularly in comic book films. We had the Dark Knight series finish. It also saw the ending of another significant series, which maybe not a lot of people listening to this podcast appreciated. But it was the year of the final year of Twilight, the Twilight franchise, which, hey, listen, and we can say what we want about Twilight. That series made cash money. Like lots and lots of cash money. The final one, the Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn, by itself brought in $829 million. Now, you think about all the DC and Marvel films that beat. I mean, so it had the end of the Christopher Nolan era, Batman era, that is. It had the end of the Twilight Saga. It had the first Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movie, The Amazing Spider-Man, which I actually appreciated quite a bit. It had one of the greatest lead performances in acting we've seen in a long time with Daniel Day-Lewis in Lincoln, only outdone by Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood. And it also saw kind of the spiritual start, if you will, of the MCU. I mean, Iron Man 3 was the start of the MCU, really, but it was the first Avengers movie that year. A lot of significant stuff. We had Wreck-It Ralph was there, the final Men in Black movie, until the new one that's coming out, of course. I mean, there was just a lot of stuff going on in 2012. Rob, when you're thinking back to the year without getting into any of the best and worst yet, what are some of the more memorable films for you when you look back on that year?
Well, I do have to say that the Best Picture winner, Argo, was really such a great film because it's such a crazy story, and it really harks back to Jack King Kirby, who was tapped to come up with this cockamamie, idea that they had to go make. I never thought anybody would ever make a movie of that, and that Ben Affleck directed it as his third feature film after Gone Baby Gone in the Town, and that it was as good as it was. Quite frankly, I was pretty shocked. And then, of course, I never thought I would ever see an Avengers movie. I know they'd planned it out, but I was sitting in that theater, and it was the first time I sat in a theater, and it's happened a lot with the MCU, where I literally couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was sitting in there going, how is this happening? Like, I couldn't believe that I live in a world where there's an actual Avengers movie. But again, when I get to my favorite, I was surprised to see my favorite movie of 2012. It was a great surprise for me, and I'm very excited to talk about it because it's one of my favorite directors coming back. And the whole year was full of great stuff.
It was full of great stuff. And some total crap, too.
And there's always the crap. No matter how good the year is, it still rains filth, as you would say. The filthy is coming down.
There was lots of filthy. But the funny thing about the Argo thing, to this day, guys, I am still a little unclear as to what the hell happened. Like, the Oscars are imperfect, but they are the best system we have. Out of all the award systems, it's the best one. But I will still, to this day, I've never understood how Ben Affleck, who directed Argo, which won Best Picture of the Year.
Right.
How he won every significant Director of the Year award, including the directors themselves. The DGA, the Directors Guild of America, anointed Ben Affleck as Best Director of the Year. And all these guys are on the director's branch of the Academy. And somehow Ben Affleck did not get nominated for Best Director at the Academy Awards. He won every other Best Director award, including the DGA. And these are the people who helped do the nominations of the Oscars, and yet he doesn't get an Oscar nomination for that, and his picture went ahead and won Best Picture. I mean, it was an odd year that way.
It's very odd.
Doesn't make any sense.
No, not. And you know what? It was a really interesting thing in 2012 that, for a long time on Facebook, people would put up just a black box. Or was it a green box to show support for the visual effects industry? Do you remember that,
I think
Robert?
it was a green box.
It was a green box. And that really came to a head in 2012 when Life of Pi was nominated for Best Picture.
Such a good movie.
So good. And Ang Lee did win Best. I believe Ang Lee won Best Director that year.
Yeah, I think he did.
And it won for Best Visual Effects. Ironically, that while they were winning Best Visual Effects, the company that was responsible for visual effects was getting ready to close down.
Yeah.
Because it was going bankrupt because Hollywood doesn't pay enough money for the visual effects, despite how much money they do pay. I mean, so there's all these wild things going on. So many beginnings, so many endings, so many transformative events in the world of film happening in 2012. And it was within that context, guys, that this week here on Best Movie, Worst Movie, we are going to talk about the best and the worst of 2012. Now, last week, week one, I started off. And I think last week, Cody, you might have started us off last week. So, Rob, let's go over to you. Let's start with your pick for the best movie of 2012.
Well, the best and perhaps it's my favorite movie of 2012. It came out in the summer, July 27th, 2012, after it debuted at the Venice Film Festival. One of my favorite directors of all time, Mr. William Friedkin, director of The Exorcist, of The French Connection, To Live and Die in L.A., Sorcerer. He even directed a great episode of the revival of The Twilight Zone in the mid-'80s called Nightcrawlers, based on a story by Robert McCammon. Let me read you the ad line of this movie. This appeared on the poster. A totally twisted, deep-fried Texas redneck trailer park murder story. And the movie that I'm talking about is, of course, Killer Joe. It was a return to form for director Friedkin. Listen to this cast. Matthew McConaughey.
Who was awesome in it, by the way.
Was unbelievable as a cop turned also he moonlights as a contract killer. Matthew McConaughey, Emile Hirsch, Juno Temple, who I have an incredible fixation on, Gina Gershon, and Thomas Hayden Church. And this is a Southern...
I forgot about him.
Southern Gothic. First of all, you will never look at a fried chicken drumstick, the same again after you see this film. This film was a collaboration with playwright and author and director and actor Tracy Letts. He wrote the screenplay. It's the second collaboration between Friedkin and Tracy Letts. Their first was the movie Bug, which is another sort of batshit insane movie. But this is a movie about it's just a Southern fried Gothic. Only in Texas could this happen, and it is a grungy, gross, twisty, turny crime thriller. I'm going to murder you because I want the insurance money. I mean, and it's unrated. This movie, you got to see the unrated cut. When I saw this film, I was taken aback. I was really shocked because I hadn't seen Friedkin working on all cylinders since 1985's To Live and Die in L.A., which is another one of my favorite films. It's not a big movie. It's not a movie for everybody, but this is a film that it not only will it fascinate you and revolt you, but it will wildly entertain you. And it is one of Matthew McConaughey's truly great performances. He is scary and he is funny and he is just mesmerizing in this movie. And every time I watch it, I like this movie more and more. And it is so damn fun to watch. Get the unrated version. And I don't know if you should watch this with a date, but if you do watch it with a date and she loves the movie, she's the girl for you.
Wife her.
Killer
Wife her
Joe. This movie, it endures. Whenever I think back to the movies of 2012, there's all these great films. Yes, The Avengers. Yes, Argo. Yes, Twilight Breaking Dawn. Okay. But nothing turns my crank more than Killer Joe does.
You know what the funny thing, one of the really interesting things about that was, of course, the McConaissance came to full fruition when he won for Dallas Buyers Club. I mean, that's when it was, he's hit the peak of it, right? But I would contend that even though he had turned in some very good performances prior to Killer Joe, and I think a lot of people just kind of mislooked at Matthew McConaughey because, I mean, he was the rom-com guy.
Right.
I mean, he did, and everybody just thought forever he would be the, all right. Like everybody just thought that was him forever, right? Which then he quoted that line during his Oscar speech, which was deliciously ironic. And
Livin, living.
But it was, I think, Killer Joe that people started to go, wait a minute, like this guy isn't just that guy we thought about like in the earlier 2000s. He's not just that guy who's not bad. This dude's good.
Really good.
And I would almost say it's the unofficial start of the McConaissance.
Yeah, and his performance is just, you can't take your eyes off him. And he's really scary. You don't know what he's going to do from 1 minute to the next. Just an incredible performance. Incredible.
I'm so happy you brought that movie up.
Totally caught me off guard. I was not expecting that one at all.
Yeah. I looked in and I'm like, I could have gone for the more obvious ones, but this really was the movie that I've revisited the most. And I've shown people, and people look at me kind of sideways when I show them how much I love this movie. But this is what movies were made for. Friedkin, Tracy Letts, and Matthew McConaughey. Oh my God. Love it.
All right. Well, we're starting off on an unexpected. I had about 4 or 5 films in my head that I thought you might go for, and it wasn't that one, but I love that pick.
No.
I mean, it was Friedkin, one of my favorite directors. I grew up with the man. I mean, Exorcist is one of my favorite horror films of all time, one of the best movies I've ever seen. And, he's had a rough career. He went for Paramount. He made movies like Blue Chips, the basketball movie. Then he made like The Hunted with Benicio del Toro.
I love that movie.
But it was nice to see him come back and really get into a meaty, it's an indie film, and to have such a talented writer, such a great script and great actors. I mean, it was just great to see him come. A real return to form for Friedkin as a director.
All right. Well, we got Rob's pick down. Cody, let's go over to you. Your pick for the best movie of 2012.
I'm so happy to hear you rant about that. Like, I forgot about that movie. I forgot how great that movie is. And that came totally out of left field. Like, I didn't expect that at all. There were a few movies like out there that I thought would probably be top contenders for the best movie of 2012. And I'll tell you what, one movie that I was thinking of that I thought maybe you, Rob, would pick because I feel like it was right up your alley. And that's Cabin in the Woods. That's one that I thought you might pick.
Great film though. I do. You know me well, even though we haven't known each other that long. That is definitely a favorite film of mine. I love that movie. It's bonkers in the best way. It's such a great plays on all the horror tropes. It's great.
There's so many good. I mean, honestly, there's so many good movies. We already rattled off like films like Argo, but I also think of movies. I mean, in 2012, the first Hobbit movie came out, and I love that movie. And that was actually the first movie that I ever had. Yes, The Unexpected Journey. That was the first conversation I ever had with my wife was about the very first Hobbit movie. Actually, the first 10 conversations with my wife was about Hobbit.
It's amazing you got her to marry you.
I know. I lucked out. And I forgot. I was looking at all the movies at 2012, and I forgot that there's so many movies that came out that are really good that I forgot 21 Jump Street came out. I loved that movie.
Oh my God, that was the year 21 Jump Street came out. That's right.
And another one that was way underrated, like John Carter. I loved John Carter.
I did too.
And I mean, I could go on and on, but I'm going to choose one that I think is a little bit surprising to people. It's definitely a comic book-esque kind of film. And I was really excited because this movie was written by Max Landis, and I like weird, crazy, wacky scripts, and that's kind of what he does. And the film I'm choosing for my favorite movie of 2012 was Chronicle. Josh Trank's Chronicle. Oh, it was so, I mean, it caught me off guard. I couldn't believe how much I liked it, because I'll tell you what, when I saw the trailer for Chronicle, I was like, ugh, another found footage film.
Yeah.
And I know it had a superhero sci-fi thriller tilt to it, but I was done with the found footage films prior to this movie. Like, I was like, I had not seen one that I liked since the Blair Witch Project. I just hadn't seen one that really I liked. And I'll tell you what, I loved this movie because as I was watching this movie, I completely forgot that it was a found footage type of movie. It felt real, almost to the point where the whole documentary style aspect of the movie felt very organic. And there were parts of the movie where you genuinely feel like this could be real. And also, I mean, that just goes to show it's very character driven, right? It's about a group of high school kids that go through this radical experience together. They gain this superpower, and then it's about how someone who is struggling at home, struggling with depression, struggling with their place in the world would handle these superpowers bestowed upon them, and how three friends deal with it. And how, you know, it's the story of a rise of an anti-hero, but it's also a story about love and friendship. I mean, at the beginning of this movie, these three friends, they're out. I mean, they're all so different. You know, one, Michael B. Jordan's character is a jock who is clearly not friends with the main character, Alex. And through this radical experience, gaining superpowers, they become friends. And I think that kind of resonates with a lot of people, you know, and I tell you what, there's a scene in this movie where Andrew has an abusive alcoholic father, and the way he handles it, it felt so real. And I mean, it was almost like Dame DeHaan. It was like I wouldn't say it was an Oscar-worthy performance, but it showed a level of talent that blew my socks off. And I also think this was the movie that really introduced the world to Michael B. Jordan. Maybe not on the grandest of scales, because I think this movie only made like $120 million at the box office. But it had like a $10 million budget. I mean, it was a shoestring of a budget. And what they did with the CGI, with them flying through the air, I mean, it's quite amazing. I mean, one of my favorite, I mean, another reason why I love this film so much is one of the scenes where they get these superpowers, they're learning how they work, and they're playing this game where they throw a tennis ball or an apple or a baseball at their head, and they're trying to stop it, you know, with their superpowers right before it hits their head. I'm like, that is exactly what I would do. That is exactly what high school aged kids would do if they got these superpowers. And they would play pranks on people, and the way that they handle it, and watching Andrew's downfall and his friends trying to bring him back, it's got so much depth to it, so much heart to it, and it really hits home. And I think it nailed the ending. And I was so shocked and surprised because, like I said, this is a found footage film, but the way the interesting creative use of the camera and the movements with the way that they can have things levitate with their brain power. I mean, it's really a unique, wonderful film, and not enough people have seen it. And it's my pick for the best movie of 2012.
Wow.
You know what's funny? I remember I got invited to go see a screening of that on the Fox lot, and I just about passed it up because I thought the exact same way you were thinking, Cody. I was like, another found footage movie, and I want to see this. Why? But my brother-in-law, Ray, he wanted to see it. So I'm like, well, I got this +1. Okay, we'll go watch it. I was floored. And you're right. It was kind of the movie that introduced a lot of people in the world to Michael B. Jordan, who was already in The Wire, but nobody remembered him from The Wire at the time.
Right.
So yeah, Michael B. and Dane DeHaan. Both of which,
dude, I can't believe, I can't believe he hasn't become a bigger star after that film, because I mean, he was just so good.
Well, he was on his way, and then The Amazing Spider-Man 2 happened.
And Valerian.
Valerian happened, and unfortunately.
And Cure for Wellness happened.
Yeah, I mean, but I think he will recover. He's just that good. But also, it really brings up the sad tale, or as Emperor Palpatine would say, the tragedy of Darth Josh Trank, who did such a magnificent job directing this, like as you pointed out, Cody, this low budget, very simple idea, and made something so profound out of it, and brought amazing performances out of these young actors. And then, of course, He gets signed up to do a Star Wars film. He gets signed up to do Fantastic Four. There's a lot of drama surrounding Fantastic Four, some of which was his fault, some of which was BS that was made up by a lot of people, unfortunately. And, Fox kind of screwed him over on Fantastic Four, and then that thing ended up being a tragedy. And by the way, Josh Trank's making a little bit of a comeback now. He's doing a film, an Al Capone film with Tom Hardy called Fonzo. That should be coming out later this year. It's a low budget, simple film with a performer like Tom Hardy. That looks interesting to see, but I had the exact same feelings you meant. I didn't want to see it. Another found footage, and I walked out floored. And then they totally screwed over. Landis, because Landis wanted to do a true sequel, but Fox was like, no, let's make it again, only it's with a different group of kids. So let's say do the entire basically the same story again, but it's a different group of kids that find the same mysterious rock. And Max was like, so you just want us to do the same movie? And he didn't want to do that. And it's really too bad because I thought that was a great start to a franchise. I thought that could have been a franchise.
100%.
Me too.
100%. It could have been awesome.
Okay. Wow. We couldn't have started off more different here. We got Chronicle and we got Killing Joe. Or Killer Joe.
Killer Joe.
And
both on the indie vibe tip. Both indie movies.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, up until this morning, I was going to do Argo. Argo was going to be mine because Argo is breathtakingly good.
Yes.
Like it's not just ho hum, it was the best picture winner. No. It was best picture winner for the reason. And here's why I thought Ben Affleck not only should have been nominated, but probably should have won best director for that film. I'll tell you right now, it's because of this. He pulled off something I've never seen any other movie really do this well. And that was this. Argo was a movie that was filled from beginning to end with excitement and tension. And there is no action in this movie. Like I've never seen a movie with such a lack of action that made me feel so much tension and excitement all at the same time. That is a director who knows what he's doing.
Completely agree.
So true.
And the way the way he was able to star in this film and direct it. And of course, he had a magnificent cast with him as well. Argo, fuck yourself. The whole bit. It was so brilliantly done, tapping into an era. I also like that it highlighted the heroism of Canada. So I'm a little biased on that, I admit. All that kind of stuff. And I was all set and ready to go with Argo today. I think there's an argument to be made for Django. Django was stupid good, but I wanted to lean away from it because I didn't want it to become cliche, but damn it, it's the Avengers. It's the Avengers. This is in just 3 podcasts. My best pick has been twice the same movie. And I'm surprised I didn't make it my best pick for 80s action movies too. Is the Avengers, man. It's the Avengers for all the reasons that we talked about in episode 1 about how it kind of more solidified the new definition of what comic book movies are today. For this era of comic book movies, the Avengers to me is still the gold standard of what that is and what comic book movies are. And it kind of solidified this, what was an evolving definition of the new brand. It was that movie that took it, solidified it, put it in concrete, and by which all other comic book movies, to me, have been measured. But it's not just a great comic book movie. This is a movie that is exciting. It's funny. It has characters that you get attached to and drawn into, and you follow them along the way, and you're walking in their footsteps. And it just, when I thought about it, while I wanted to go with Argo initially, there was no movie that year, and very few since, that had me feeling the way I felt when I walked out of the theater. I'm going on and on all the time about how movies are experiential things. We go into movies for an experience. Now, whether that's an experience to feel fear or happiness or sadness or introspection or, tension or whatever, we go into movies for an experience. And coming out of Avengers, I just can't remember the last time I felt like that coming out of a movie, And again, we are now talking about, we're coming up in an era now where a little while from now, we've got Avengers Endgame coming in out, and it's all predicated. You can say on the first Iron Man, sure, that was the start, but really the true North Star for the MCU and for what the modern comic book movie is came out of Avengers. And if I was just being honest with myself, and I didn't want to do the same movie that I already picked for another category, but I just thought to myself, if I'm going to be honest, the movie for me that gets me most excited when I think of 2012, that puts the biggest smile on my face when I think of 2012, it's the Avengers. So I am going to go against my better judgment here and just go with my heart, and I'm going to go with the Avengers. So we've got 3 radically different movies. By the way, all 3 of our picks, not one of them nominated for Best Picture that year.
Right.
Isn't that interesting? That not one of our picks were nominated for Best Picture that year. Although I almost went with Argo, which won the Best Picture, so maybe that's a little bit of a mitigating circumstance. Okay. Well, it wasn't just a year of great victories and hoo-has. It also was a year that saw its share of absolute abysmal crap. And I'm going to lead off now the worst of the year. And I'm going to tell you a little story going into my worst of the year, and you'll pick up pretty quick which movie I'm talking about. Back in 2012, I was in my earlier days of working when I was running all the online stuff for AMC Theaters. And we had set up a time, this guy had this movie coming out. And we arranged, I had my office and my studio at the AMC Burbank 16 at the time. And we had arranged for this guy who both, I can't remember if he directed the film or not. I'm not 100% sure. But he's a well-known director. And no, he didn't direct it because Rob Cohen directed it. Wait a minute. Yes. But this guy is a well-known director, and he was starring in this film. And he had said he'd like to come in and do an interview. So it was great. I had him come into our studio. I sat down with this guy. Honestly, one of the most fun half hours I've spent with the dude, because we only did our interview for about 5 minutes, but he just talked with me for like a half hour. So real, so genuine, really nice, sweet guy. And we just talked about regular stuff. And it was, like I said, one of the most enjoyable times I've ever had talking to somebody. And it broke my heart that the movie we were talking about ended up being what I think is the worst film of 2012. That gentleman was Tyler Perry, and that movie was Alex Cross. A character that had been played in much better versions. The same character had been played by Morgan Freeman in other movies. This was played by Tyler Perry, who I love. You were just talking about Argo and Ben Affleck. I love Tyler Perry in Gone Girl.
Oh, yeah.
Woo!
Such a good movie.
And he was so good in that as the lawyer dude. He was great in that. And I got to tell you, it pains me now to talk so shadily about his movie because I literally and legitimately really like this guy. But Alex Cross was a confused, bewildered, scattered, directionless, and at times utterly ridiculous movie that was meant to be in the vein of what was the one that Morgan Freeman was with, the spider?
Kiss the Girls and Along Came a Spider.
And Along Came a Spider. Kiss the Girl. That was trying to be a not college, not high school, but elementary school film class version of Along Came a Spider. And it was just it was almost unbearable to watch. And I'll never forget, because the character that he plays, Alex Cross, has a certain mannerism and a certain tone to him. And then all of a sudden, I remember there's this one scene where he's talking to his mother, and all of a sudden out cracks this line, "I'll meet him at the cold gates of hell before I let him hurt another." It's like, where did that come from? I was like, I get it. Somebody wrote that line and it looked cool on the page, but that does not fit in here. It was just an abysmal movie. And what added salt to it was the fact that I had interviewed this guy about this movie before I'd seen it, and I had liked him so much. And I was then looking forward to the movie. But yeah, as we sit here in 2019 and I'm looking back at the era that was 2012, I got to say, guys, the worst movie of that year was Alex Cross.
You know, I can't debate that. I've read all those books, the James Patterson, Alex Cross books. I've been reading them for years, and I liked Along Came a Spider and Kiss the Girls weren't perfect.
I liked those
but
movies,
I liked
though.
them.
Yeah.
I thought they were good. I'm with you. I saw Alex Cross. I'm like, what the hell is this? I was so upset. I mean, and there's a lot of other great books that could have made, like Jack and Jill, you know, or all that. Oh, you're right. I hated that movie.
It was truly something awful. And I mean, really, when you think about it in depth, at any rate, I suppose it shouldn't surprise us too much. It came to us from the same director who gave us, did he do Stealth? Did Rob Cohen do Stealth? I think he did Stealth.
He did do Fast and Furious, so come on, dude.
He did do he did the original Fast and Furious, which I think is god-awful garbage. I hate the first
No, that movie is
best.
a gem. That movie is a classic.
Cody knows what's up. Cody knows what's up.
Shot, beat by beat rip-off of Point Break. That's what
it's an American classic, and people love it.
Yeah, I do too.
But he also did. Rob Cohen also did Daylight, which was a Sylvester Stallone film that a lot of people didn't like. That I got to admit, I didn't mind. He did the first Triple X, so there's that. He did
an American classic,
and he did Hurricane Heist in 2018. True American classic, says Cody, out of nowhere. He did The Scrolls, so I don't know. Maybe it would have been better off if
the
Tyler
Skulls.
had.
Did you say Scrolls? He did The Skulls.
Did I say The Scrolls?
I think you said The
Captain
Skrulls.
Marvel on my head. The Skulls. I mean, it would have been better off if Tyler just directed it himself, I think. I mean, nothing could have been worse.
They had that weird water pipe scene in the building, and it was really just awful.
Yeah, not so good. Not looking. Now, I will say this too. They had an interesting cast with them because you had Edward Burns was in that with them. You had Matthew Fox, who was still trying to figure out if he was a star outside of Lost. That hasn't worked out so well, I guess. And I like Matthew Fox. I do. You had Jean Reno was there. So you had a good lineup. You had a good cast. You had good source material, but for whatever reason, they just couldn't put the pieces of the puzzle together. So my contention here for worst movie 2012 is going to be Alex Cross. So Cody, let's go over to you. What's your pick for the worst of that year?
I can't argue against that because that movie is god awful, and I'm pretty glad he brought that up. I will never watch it again. However, I believe my pick is even worse.
Uh-oh.
So let me paint you a picture. This movie that I'm about to reveal was based on a book that I actually loved. And I was really excited about it because when I heard it was announced, I was like, okay, this is probably going to be like a B-level crazy sci-fi action-y kind of movie. And I was hoping that it would kind of know what it is, similar to how, you know, Fast and the Furious has embraced its wacky, quirky, insanity world that it is.
Right.
And this movie was directed by a Russian director by the name of Timur Berkanabatov, I believe. I probably just butchered his pronunciation. But I remember in the marketing, they said it was by the director of the movie Wanted. And I loved Wanted.
Me too,
That's
man.
the one with Angelina Jolie, Curve the Bullet. I mean, that movie was incredible. And I was like, okay, they're going to take the action styles of Wanted and combine it with the great Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. That is my pick. And I was so excited because this was just a couple years after Avatar had come out. This is in like the 3D craze. And I had not seen a great 3D movie since Avatar. I think we all could agree Avatar was phenomenal in 3D. Everything else since has just kind of been meh. And I was like, that style of action could really lend itself to be something very special in a 3D format. And then I saw the movie. And boy, oh boy, is this movie bad. The weird thing is the actor, Benjamin Walker, who actually plays Abraham Lincoln, is actually does a pretty solid job. It's just everyone else in the movie didn't get the memo about what this movie was, and it made no sense. And I'm not even going to spend any more time talking about the rest of the film. I'm strictly going to tell you my experience at the theater. Like I said, I had liked 3D previously, and I'm a guy who never gets motion sickness. I'm a guy who enjoys those kinds of things. You know, when I go to theme parks, I like the 3D James Bond rides. You know, I don't have any kind of issues with getting sensitive to those kinds of things. I've never even been car sick. When I walked out of that movie, I felt like my head had just been beaten by Rocky Balboa because the use of 3D and flying axes and zombies' heads flying into the air was so terrible. I mean, it's just so bad. I cannot. It killed 3D for me. After that movie, I never wanted to see a movie in 3D ever again. It was that bad. And it just, because I really like the book. And I think this is a film where it's another example of the fact that more often than not, the writer of the book is not necessarily the right pick to pen the script to the film.
So true.
I feel like a lot of times we see movies where they get the author of the book to write the script and it doesn't turn out well. And boy, oh boy, is this bad. And the thing is, the book is written similar to World War Z. It's a diary of journal entries. So the narrative doesn't necessarily lend itself to, a 2-hour formatted film. So they've got to take some liberty and they've got to make some changes. And I understand that. But what they came up with was just a big steaming pile of garbage where there's just axes being thrown at your face every 30 seconds and everyone acting in the movie doesn't really know what's going on. And I just hope I never have to see this again. And I hope that me telling people this just, allows them to avoid it. Thankfully, 3D is dying and people won't have to experience it. So that's my pick. I mean, this movie, it's a kick to the face, guys.
Besides the fact that it is a kick to the face, there are two inadvertent real shames about the movie. One was, I believe that was Rufus Sewell was in that one, right? And I really like Rufus Sewell. And so it was just a shame that one has to stain his resume. So that's a real shame. The other big shame out of it was, I'm sure, a totally unintended consequence, but it cast a shadow over a movie that came later called Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, which was actually really pretty damn good.
Yeah. Yep.
But nobody wanted to see it because we all still had that bad taste in our mouth of Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. And here's this was the thing that stood out to me the most, because I didn't go to see it in 3D, thank God, because I hate 3D. But when I went to go see it, I came out, the first thing I thought was, this movie had no idea what it was trying to be.
Right.
Because half the time it's trying to be this serious commentary on the development of the nation and using slaves and slavery and bringing free, blah, blah, blah. And then it would switch gears and be this wacky, it's as wacky as the title would suggest, Abraham Lincoln Vampire. And then it would go back to trying to be a serious film, making serious observations. It's like, you do not know what you are. You have no idea with what you are. So how are we supposed to know what you are? And that's a really good pick.
It really goes to show that sometimes making very, very specific genre, crazy, wacky films like this are sometimes the hardest things to master when it comes to making a film. I mean, we all know, like, making a really great film is one of the hardest things in the world to do. Yep. But striking a tone for something like this is so difficult. And they really, really botched it.
Man, that's a good one.
Tone is everything. I mean, this movie, like you both pointed out, it's so wildly divergent. It doesn't know what it's going to be. It didn't take its premise, like on the flip side, to take another zombie film. A movie like Shaun of the Dead strikes a perfect balance between the truly apocalyptic situation of the dead coming back to life and these two kind of schlep rock workaday guys who are trying to survive the zombie apocalypse. But it always strikes the perfect tone. It's funny and horrifying, but it feels natural and real. It never betrays itself, whereas Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter betrayed itself every other cut, it seemed like.
Every other cut. Yep. Exactly.
So we've got Alex Cross. We've got Abraham Lincoln Vampire. And Rob, it's time for you, sir. What's your pick for the worst of the year?
I have to, again, like with Cody, I have to preface this by saying bad movies are easy to pick out. But I think what's worse for me are when movies are supposed to be, by every stretch of the imagination, they should be great. They have all of the advantages, and there's no reason why this movie should not be great. But not only was this movie my biggest disappointment of 2012, it also sullied the memory of one of the greatest genre movies I've ever seen at the exact same time. Now, first of all, let me begin by stating who is in this movie. Listen to this cast. Noomi Rapace, Michael Fassbender, Guy Pearce, Idris Elba, Logan Marshall Green, and Charlize Theron. Who directed this movie? God. one of my favorite directors of all time, Ridley Scott.
Yep.
What is this movie a prequel to? Arguably one of the greatest, if not, let's just say it, the greatest science fiction horror film ever made, Alien. What is the movie? If you haven't guessed it by now, that's right. It's Prometheus, the most beautifully made, brain-dead science fiction film I have ever seen, where a team of crack scientists, presumably the best scientists on Earth, land on an alien planet and act like they've never cracked open a biology book or... I mean, they are the dumbest group of, they're dumber than a box of rocks, these people. It's like they see an alien entity with a gigantic cobra head. What do? They just go touch it. Let's just stick your hand. There's all kinds of biological crap all over the ground moving around. There's weird black goo we haven't seen. Let's just go touch it and put our fingers inside everything that we can find in an alien planet. And then it uses this ridiculous idea of the chariots of the gods, alien astronauts that seeded the Earth with a human population by apparently terraforming the entire planet by putting alien goo in one river. This is not how biology works. But anyway, not only that, but it began a film cycle that was later repeated in Alien Covenant, where our hero, our crazy psychopathic android, winds up, David, played by Michael Fassbender, turns out creating eventually the alien from the first Alien movie. So the first Alien movie, which presents the universe as being a cold, dark, unforgiving place that we will never truly understand, and presents us the greatest alien creature ever. What Prometheus does is tell us it's not an alien at all. It's the result of some psychopathic android from Earth and his little science project. He was the one that made the alien that we find out later. I mean, this movie should have been great. It's beautiful to look at. It's really well acted, but it is the dumbest big budget science fiction movie I've ever seen. And I was so disappointed when I saw this in the theater. I wanted to cry. I wanted somebody to hold me. I wanted them to pat me and stroke my back and run their hands through my hair because I was crying like a 4-year-old on Christmas morning that did not get the Hot Wheels set that he really wanted. It was not good. And I hated myself for hating this movie. But, you know, I've watched the beautiful documentary that Charlie de Lauzirika did that's on the Blu-ray. It's like 4.5 hours long. I blame Damon Lindelof. And I'm never going to forgive him. I don't forgive anybody for this.
Wow.
Rob.
I'm sorry.
I actually really, really like that movie. I actually loved Prometheus. I walked out of the theater and I was like, you know what? I left the theater after seeing Prometheus and I had more questions than when I started the film. And I actually really like that. I don't know what it is. I can't argue against any of your logic because I agree with you that it is frustrating the way that they kind of explained away a lot of things. And I do believe that the story, we don't really want to dive into it right now, but the arc that it goes into in Covenant with David and everything, but I really enjoyed Prometheus. I really did.
You're a young man and the world has yet to beat you down. Your expectations have yet to be shattered.
I just think I really like the original Alien films, but I don't think I have that love of them because they came before my time. And so like I appreciate them and I do really like them, but I mean I dug Prometheus. I feel like a lot of your feelings towards it is the story. And I get that there's some scientists that do some dumb things, but I mean, as far as an overall film, I really don't think it's terrible.
No, but that's the problem for me. It's a beautifully made film. It's got everything going for it. But as you just said, the storyline is monumentally brain dead. And it might as well be lurching around like a zombie that was an Abraham Lincoln vampire hunter or whatever, one of the undead, one of the vampires.
It's funny here because physically we're in a representative spot here because I got Rob on the right of me. I've got Cody about 1,800 miles to my left, and I'm right in the middle. I didn't like this movie. I wouldn't say I hated the movie, but I did not like the movie. And I remember just more than hating it, I felt an overwhelming sense of disappointment.
That's
in
it,
because
right there.
You started this thing off by talking about who the director is, what the pedigree of this film is, the actors involved with the film. I'll tell you what, I loved the opening scene with the engineers.
It was so cool.
That ceremony of taking whatever it was that broke down his DNA, that spread it like a seed throughout the ecosphere on Earth. I thought that was interesting. And then to me, it just went downhill. And again, not to the point that I hate it, because I didn't hate the film, but I was profoundly disappointed in it.
That's what it was for me. It was such a crushing disappointment. I mean, sometimes, these movies have the best intentions. Bad movies that are obviously bad, I can live with those. But when a movie has such potential and such unbelievable talent, both behind and in front of the camera, when that doesn't come together, it's like, a great souffle that you cooked all day that you're just waiting to serve your guests at dinner for dessert, and it deflates. Your souffle.
I just felt. I mean, it's just so subjective. Like, I was watching the movie, and I recognized, like, man, they were doing some dumb things even while it was going on. But it kept opening up more doors, and I had more questions, and I was digging everything that was going on with the engineers, I think, are what they were called. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm cut from a different cloth, guys. I don't know.
Well, there you have it, guys. We have drawn this conversation to a close. I'm sure you guys have a lot of things you would say about this, but just to highlight once again, our pick for 2012 best movies and worst movies. Myself, I'm going with The Avengers. Rob is going with Killer Joe, and Cody has gone with one of the maybe only truly great found footage movie of the last number of years, and that's Chronicle. On our worst of list, I myself am just heartbroken to talk about the fact that this a movie that by a guy I really liked and I was looking forward to it was, of course, Alex Cross. Rob, you were picking surprisingly. Like, I knew you didn't like it. I didn't know you hated it that much, but you're going with Prometheus. And of course, we've got Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter coming from Cody. So, guys, that will wrap it up for now for our best of, worst of, talking about 2012. I want to thank the guys who are here hosting this show with me. First of all, Robert Meyer Burnett, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM. Find me on Instagram at RMBurnett. Find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, or my website, theburnettwork.net.
And, of course, Mr. Cody Miller. Cody, what do you got going on online?
You guys can find me at Twitter, just at Swim Miller with one M, on Instagram at Cody Miller, and check out my YouTube channel. If you've ever wondered what the life of an Olympic swimmer looks like, I make a lot of cool swimming related videos. Go check that out.
And, of course, you guys can follow me on Instagram, it's at John Campy. And you can watch my show every day, The John Campy Show, at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on my YouTube channel. That's simply at youtube.com/John Campy. And you see Robert Meyer Burnett there almost every day as well as our other co-host, Ashley Whalen, joins us as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news and all that sorts of good stuff. All right, guys, that'll wrap it up for now. We'll be back again in a week or so with another installment of Best Movie, Worst Movie. So until then, guys, bye-bye.